Hello, my four regions knowing, different Native American regional groups understanding, and powerful scholars. Welcome back to Some History with Mr. Harms. Today we're talking about the Spanish exploration of Texas. So key vocabulary, you have it written down on your notes, but just to let you know, a conquistador is someone who conquers. Now we almost always use this word to talk about when Spain came over to the New World and started conquering places like Mexico and Peru. Expedition, it's a journey, it's a voyage, something where you go for exploration, for scientific research, sometimes even for war. To convert is to change someone's religious faith or belief. You can convert people in different ways, but today we're focusing on converting people in a religious way. And then La Relación, sorry for my pronunciation, but it was a book written by a man named Cabeza de Vaca detailing a journey that he took through Texas. So first things first, European countries, these ones right here, colonized North and South America from about the late 1490s when people started coming over and colonizing for hundreds of years. There was European countries like United Kingdoms, France, Portugal, even like some small ones down in here like the Netherlands came over and colonized the areas over here. Colonize means a country to send a group of settlers to take over an area. There were people living here, but these European countries came over and took over them. The first one to do so was Spain. Oh, I should have put that out of the way. They called all this land that they took New Spain. New Spain was the name of this. They were the first ones to come over and start colonizing because they were the ones who first discovered. They were quickly followed by all these other countries that we were looking at. But the granddaddy of them all was the Spanish. Now, there were very complex political reasons why Spain wanted to colonize the New World. There was the 700-year war that had been happening. They'd been racing Portugal. There was a competition between them and other European powers. And this is that war that was happening. This is Portugal racing around Africa before them. This is that mercantilism right here. Spices, trying to spread Catholicism even more, but we don't need to focus on that. That's some like big picture stuff. We're going to boil it down, distill it down to the 3 G's. And that would be God, gold, and glory. So God, the Spanish wanted to convert as many people to Catholicism as possible. One of their big goals, what they thought being a successful Christian country at that time was go take over other places, convert them to Christianity. Gold. They wanted to collect as much valuable things as they could. On that last slide, there was a word, mercantilism. You don't need to know it from my class. But pretty much what that means is it was a thought at that time that if your country had the most gold, you were the most powerful. If you had the most wealth, you were the most powerful. So gold means to collect as much valuable things as you possibly can. Not just gold, but also silver, really valuable raw materials, cash crops. And then glory. They wanted to be the best of all the Christian countries. They wanted this little first medal to show, hey, we're the largest, most impressive. You do that by having the most land. You do that by conquering other impressive places. So these 3 G's, God, gold, and glory, are the reasons that are in the back of our head for why Spain was colonizing. And that's going to be important in just a second. So enter Christopher Columbus. Those 3 G's were true before he sailed the ocean blue. But in 1942, he accidentally finds 2 continents, North and South America, that are full of people that you could convert, possible riches that you could take back to Spain, and possibly there's some large civilizations that they could conquer. That would build up a lot of glory. That would be really impressive in comparison to the other European countries. So what else we could do?
All right. Why do we even have a Christopher Columbus Day? Let's be honest. This guy, number 1, enslaved a bunch of Native Americans. Number 2, he opened the door to lots of diseases from the Europeans, killing millions of people. Number 3, this guy's not even Spanish. His name's like Columbo or something. I don't know.
What are you... Get out of here. Get out of here. We're talking about the effects on Native Americans next week. I don't even know. He's right, but I don't even know. So flustered I had to take a second. All right, and we're continuing. So Columbus finds this new area that can be used for all 3 of the things that the Spanish are really looking for. So The next 197 years, they are conquering places. They roll in within 20 years, within 30 years, and conquer the massive Aztec Empire in modern-day Mexico. That is huge for glory. This is a picture right here. I believe it's trying to represent Cortez attacking some Aztecs. They conquer the massive Incan Empire, which is down in Peru in South America. It took them a much longer time. In these places, they convert millions of Native Americans. They're also killing millions of Native Americans because of European diseases, but we'll talk about that next week. Thanks, Mr. Riley. And they're extracting millions and millions of pounds of gold and silver from the areas that they conquered. So for all of these 200-ish years, they're bringing in all three: God, gold, and glory, doing a great job. But in these years, the word Texas has not been mentioned. We're in a Texas history class. What are the Spanish doing? On this map that we saw quite some time ago, poor decision to go all the way back, but I already committed. This shows, it looks like Texas is in there. What's going on? Why haven't I mentioned anything about Texas yet? So the unfortunate thing, or I guess it's not quite the unfortunate thing, but the Spanish did discover Texas within 30 years of finding the New World. But they didn't want it. For 197 years after they discovered it, the first Spaniard, his name was Pineda, he sailed around, put a map, had Texas on it, knew it was there. The Spanish didn't set up a settlement until 1689. So what we really need to understand for Texas history is why the Spanish didn't go for that. And the key is going to be God, gold, and glory, because that's what they're looking for. That's their everything right now. And this in the back says, why do you think why do you think the Spanish didn't want Texas? So what I want you to do right now, hit pause on the video in this little area below your vocabulary words, right down here. I want you to make a guess. Why exactly do you think the Spanish wouldn't have wanted Texas, or why would they have left it alone for so long? Alright. So our big idea for the day is the answer to that question. Texas didn't have enough of any of the three G's for Spain to care about it. There was a small population. If you convert a couple, 100,000 people to Christianity, that's not going to be a huge deal. No one's super impressed. Not worth it. No gold, silver, or valuable material. Oil did not become valuable for hundreds of years. Oil is hugely valuable, which is why Texas land is very valuable today, but it was not valuable then. There wasn't those cold hard cash kind of things that they were looking for. And there was no great civilization to conquer. There was no glory in going to Texas. So they explored around, and we're going to talk about the exploring that they did for those 197 years, but they never found anything that was worth setting up an establishment until something changed. So this is a lot of the exploring that was happening. You can see 1519 all the way through the 15s, and then nothing really happened after 1600, and it wasn't until 1690 almost they ended up colonizing it. So as we're going through here now, you should be writing down as I talk about the different explorers. I want my exact notes that I have here. I made them nice and short for you on your paper so that you can refer back to them during class. So the first expedition that was Spanish that saw some piece of Texas was Alvarez de Pineda's expedition. He was just going around the Gulf of Mexico trying to make a map. And the big reason we care about him making this map is because every other explorer after him could use that map to help them on their journey. If you're going to a place and you have no idea where there's land, where there's not land, where there's a river, where there might not be a river, you're going to be confused. You're going to be having a difficult time. All the other explorers used his map that he made and his crew made for their journey. They made it about to Corpus Christi and then sailed on back towards Spain. Where it really gets interesting is the Narvaez and Cabeza de Vaca expedition. So they went, and Panfilo had a job to do. He was given the job of colonizing pretty much all of Florida, all the way down here to the top of to northern Mexico. This hadn't really been explored that much besides Pineda, but he was given the men, and the Spanish government told him, go conquer it. Just like that, he died. He made some really, really stupid decisions while exploring. He had a couple hundred men. Almost all of them died. About a couple of years later, only 3 of them are still alive, or not enslaved by Native Americans somewhere along the Gulf Coast. So they died very quickly. Cabeza de Vaca, he's not really super high up, but he was kind of a captain. He was a person with a little bit of power in the group. He survived and explored around Texas. He worked as a trader. He got a lot of trust from Native Americans because he had so he helped them with like healing. He had some European medicine that he was able to use. And then after 8 years, he returns back to Mexico. This actually only shows him like traveling back to Mexico. He was all around the plains and in different areas for 8 years, exploring all throughout the 4 regions of Texas before he went back. And he wrote La Relación. Oh, God, I can't say words very well. And the reason we care about that is after those 8 years of traveling Texas, he saw a lot of things. He met a lot of people. He had a good understanding of what was going on in Texas, and he wrote it down in a book about his adventures and the people he interacted with. And he also talked about possible riches. Now, riches to me sound a lot like gold. And when people started reading his book and saying, ooh, Cabeza de Vaca says that there's some money to be made in this northern area we haven't explored that much. Let's send some conquistadors, some people up there to conquer it. Maybe there's some big civilizations that are also up there. He thought that there was this like 7 cities that were made out of gold, something like that, he was talking about in his book. But really there wasn't. So the big one of these expeditions, there was about 3 or 4 that we saw on that past map. His name was Coronado. They read La Relación, and they were like, Cabeza de Vaca says there's some money to be made up there. We're going to go up into Texas. We're going to make that money. And then he wandered around. He wandered because Cabeza de Vaca came out all the way over here as well during his journey outside of Texas. They wandered through Arizona, New Mexico, all the way up north, higher into the Midwestern states, and they didn't find anything. They brought like a whole conquering army to come and like take these cities that possibly had gold in them, but there was nothing. And a couple different groups went and tried to find these famous cities that possibly were up there, possibly weren't, and they all just kept not finding them. That's why on this map here, you can see a couple groups are going, a couple groups go right after Cabeza de Vaca gets back in the 30s and the 40s, and then no one goes, and then one comes back up maybe just to see, didn't see anything, and it is not until a man named Robert de la Salle, a Frenchman, establishes a fort in the Gulf Coast region of Texas, that the Spanish kind of look around and say, oh no, the French are way too close to us. Remember, they're in this like glory competition with all the other Christian countries to see who's the best, who's conquered the most land, who's got the best land. And if the French roll into this area that the Spanish had already walked through and kind of, they have like a claim on it, but they never set up any settlements up there because they walked around. They couldn't find any God, gold, or glory. But now there's competition. Now someone else wants this land. Spain, so honestly, this fort does really bad. All the people within it are killed by Native Americans very quickly. There's a mutiny against our boy Robert here. All sorts of bad. The Spanish don't know that. They decide we need to go up there. We need to set up some sort of settlement. So they establish what's called missions. Did you guys see my flag? My Scotland flag. That's a bummer. They establish a bunch of missions and presidios. A mission is just a church that they set up to try and convert Native Americans to Catholicism, and presidios were forts to protect those. But the big reason they went up there was not that conversion work. The big reason they went up there was because they thought the French wanted it. And that steps on the glory. They got to get up there. They got to be the ones that own it. All right, in class, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into these people, these explorations, and the reasons behind them.